This is File 052. I'm opening it tonight from the Echo 6 archives, a record that was never meant to leave the vault. What follows is drawn directly from the field account of one Sergeant Daniel Rourke, a reconnaissance leader attached to Bravo Unit, Northern Command, in the year 1978. His testimony concerns a mission into the Carpathian foothills, where a village long abandoned by its people had become a place of whispered fear. This is his account. Field Notes, voice of Sergeant Daniel Rourke, recorded after extraction. I had been on missions before where the landscape itself felt like an enemy, but the Carpathian foothills in late autumn were something else. The air was colder than it should have been for the season, not just sharp but biting, the kind that cut at your lungs when you breathed too fast. We had orders to move on the village at first light, but even during our approach the night before, something felt off. The tree line stood too still, as if the wind had forgotten it existed, and when the moon rose over the ridge, it made the abandoned rooftops glow in a way that felt staged, like a warning painted in silver. There were 6 of us. Bravo Recon, short detachment. I was in charge, and that meant my men looked to me for confidence I did not always feel. Corporal Levin, steady with a rifle but quick with doubts. Private Harker, young, eager, pretending not to be scared when his knuckles whitened on the stock of his weapon. Sergeant Mills, older than me, eyes that had seen too much, who muttered about omens whenever the silence stretched. And then there were Ramirez and Kent, both strong, both reckless in different ways, the kind of men you wanted when things went loud but prayed would not draw trouble before trouble came. Our briefing had been thin. Reports of villagers long gone, driven out by famine or fear, depending on which intelligence officer you believed. But for weeks before our deployment, local chatter had grown insistent, voices heard at night, torchlights seen weaving through empty streets, livestock found mutilated in fields where no one claimed to keep them. The higher-ups dismissed most of it as folklore, yet they still sent us in, which told me someone higher than them thought the risk was real. We made camp just shy of the outer gate. No walls remained, only 2 leaning stone pillars marked with carvings so weathered they looked more like scars in the rock than human hands at work. Kent joked that they were teeth, and Mills spat and said they were warnings. The fire we built was small, controlled, and yet I could not shake the feeling that the darkness around us swallowed more than it should. Our radio cracked with static every hour, though we were well within range. I reported in as best I could, and the reply was garbled enough that I was not sure if they understood we were proceeding as planned. At 0500 we moved in. Boots on cobblestones slick with moss, rifles at the ready, though nothing stirred. The houses stood roofless in places, door frames sagging, windows like eye sockets that had watched too long. I told the men to split into pairs and check structures along the main road, while I and Mills pressed toward the church that rose at the center. Its spire leaned, but had not fallen, a crooked finger pointing at a sky that had begun to pale. That church, I told myself, would be where records lay, if there were any left. We did not make it halfway before the first sign came. Levin and Harker had gone to a 2-story dwelling on the left. I saw them step inside, heard Levin curse about the stench, then silence. A beat too long. My gut tightened. I called for them, and their figures reappeared in the doorway, pale. Harker's mouth opened as if to speak, but what came out was not his voice. It was low, stretched, like words drawn out of the bottom of a well, and it spoke a language none of us understood. Levin dragged him forward, shouting that something was wrong, that the boy had not spoken since he saw what was upstairs. I grabbed Harker, shook him, ordered him to answer. His eyes were wide, pupils blown out, skin clammy. His lips still moved, forming shapes I did not recognize. And yet I swear the sound I heard came from behind me, not from his throat. Mills swore again and made the sign of the cross. I ordered Kent to help carry him, but before they could move, the ground beneath us vibrated, a hum low and deep as if something enormous turned beneath the earth. We pulled back to the open square. The fire pit there was filled with ashes so fresh they still smoldered, though no one had lived here in decades. Levin kept saying we should leave, that no mission was worth this. I told him orders were orders, but inside I was already doubting how long we could hold discipline. Ramirez tried the radio again, pounding the receiver as if force could make it speak. All he got was the same static, though this time I swore I heard a voice inside it, faint, like a woman crying. The church loomed ahead. Its doors were chained, but chains do not stop men with bolt cutters. When we forced it open, the air that poured out was colder than the night had been, sharp with the stink of mold and something sweeter, rot trying to disguise itself as perfume. Inside, the pews were gone. Only splinters remained, and on the walls, symbols had been scratched in overlapping layers, spirals and lines intersecting into a confusion that made my eyes ache to follow. Harker stirred enough to croak one word, in his own voice this time. "Hungry." Then he collapsed again. Mills said the boy should not be carried further. I said we would rest here, take bearings, wait for him to recover. But even as I spoke, I knew rest would not come. The walls seemed to breathe. Shadows did not stay where shadows belonged. And in the far corner, by the shattered altar, something like a figure crouched, unmoving, yet never quite in the same place when you blinked. Kent wanted to shoot. Mills grabbed his arm and hissed that you cannot put bullets into what does not have flesh. I ordered everyone down, rifles up, but safety on, until we could be sure what we saw. That was when the figure straightened, not fast, not slow, but with a grace that made my stomach turn. It was tall, taller than any of us, and draped in what I first thought were robes, but realized were tatters of curtains, long shredded strips that trailed across the floor. Its face, I could not see its face, only the suggestion of one, like features remembered from a dream. And when it turned toward us, the entire church groaned, beams flexing as if in a storm, though the air was still. The thing did not move closer. Not then. It simply lifted an arm, long and skeletal beneath the cloth, and pointed at Harker. The boy shuddered, gasped awake, and screamed a sound that was not human. It ripped through the nave, rattled the glass in the few windows that remained, made my teeth ache as if they would splinter. Then silence again, but in that silence, I knew something had changed. Whatever haunted this place had noticed us, and it had no intention of letting us leave unmarked. After that scream, nothing felt the same. Harker lay limp in Kent's arms, chest rising and falling too quickly, as if every breath was a struggle. The figure had lowered its arm, but did not vanish. It stood as if waiting, head tilted in that awful way, and then it seemed to dissolve into the very stones of the church, retreating without moving. We never saw it leave, only realized that we were alone again, though the air carried the pressure of being watched. Ramirez cursed and demanded we pull out, right then, before the boy died. Levin seconded him, muttering that the mission was already lost. Mills was silent, eyes fixed on the symbols clawed into the walls. I told them we would regroup outside, re-establish a perimeter, and decide there. But even as I said it, my voice felt hollow, like someone else was speaking through me. We staggered back into the square, dragging Harker between us. The sun had not yet fully broken the horizon, but the light had changed. It was dimmer somehow, as if the air itself filtered it. Shadows clung too long, stretched in directions that did not match the angle of the rising light. Kent noticed first. Our own shadows did not move when we moved. They lagged, twitching a heartbeat behind, and when we stopped they kept shifting, like they had minds of their own. That broke something in Levin. He dropped his rifle, shouted that we were cursed, that the dead had claimed us. I barked at him to pick it up, to get control of himself, but he only shook his head, eyes wild, lips trembling with prayers I did not recognize. Ramirez tried to steady him, but the tension had already spread. Mills muttered that the boy was a vessel now, that the thing in the church had put something inside him. Kent argued, saying we had all seen it mark Harker, and that meant we were next. Every word cracked the group further. I tried the radio again, static, then a voice, clearer this time. A woman's sobs turned to laughter, laughter that broke off into words. They were English, but wrong, syllables twisted. All I caught was one phrase: "You were expected." I dropped the receiver like it burned me. Mills swore we should abandon the equipment, abandon everything, and run for the ridge. But when we looked back at the way we came, the path was gone. The road we had taken through the trees was still there in stone, but beyond it the forest seemed deeper, denser, as if the hills had shifted while we were inside. That was when Harker opened his eyes again. He should have been unconscious, maybe even dead, but he sat up with a strength that threw Kent off balance. His gaze swept across us, with no recognition, like he had never seen us before. Then he spoke in that drawn-out voice, not his own, repeating a single sentence over and over. "You belong here. You belong here." Levin snapped, lifted his rifle and aimed at the boy. I shouted for him to lower it. Kent lunged to push the barrel down. In the scuffle, the shot rang out, deafening in the still square. The bullet struck stone, but the echo that followed was not stone breaking. It was screaming, hundreds of voices rising at once, pouring from every doorway, every window, every empty shell of a house. The sound rolled over us in waves, rattling the bones in my skull. Ramirez fell to his knees, clutching his head. Mills dropped his cross and began muttering faster, incoherent. Kent bellowed like a man drowning, trying to shake Levin while the boy just sat there, grinning with teeth too sharp, too many. That was the moment I realized we were no longer soldiers on a mission. We were prey, and the village itself was the hunter. The screaming did not stop. It rose and fell like a tide, each swell louder, closer, until I could no longer tell if it came from outside or inside my own head. Harker, if it was still Harker, stood with an ease that made my stomach twist. His movements were too smooth, like a puppet with perfect strings. He walked past Levin, past Kent, straight into the center of the square, and the voices bent around him. Then silence, so sudden it made my ears ring. The boy's body shivered once, then arched as if something inside was trying to claw its way out. His mouth opened wider than it should have, jaw stretching until it cracked. From that hollow came words in English this time, though no lips should have been able to form them. "You were chosen. You are already part of us." I raised my rifle. I do not remember deciding to do it. The sight fell on his chest, and my finger curled on instinct. Mills caught my arm and whispered that if I pulled the trigger, we would all be bound forever. His eyes were wide, terrified, but certain. Kent snarled that we had no choice, that the boy was gone. Ramirez only knelt and sobbed, rocking as though he were back in a childhood prayer. The ground shook again, harder this time. Stones cracked in the square, splitting in the patterns that matched the spirals carved on the church walls. From the fissures, cold air rose, carrying with it the stink of decay. The village was waking, and it was waking through him. I shouted orders, though I do not know if anyone listened. Kent dragged Ramirez to his feet. Mills clung to his cross, though his hands bled from gripping it too hard. Levin stared at Harker as if hypnotized. And then the boy turned, and in his eyes I saw all of us reflected, but not as we were. In the reflection we were rotting, hollow, our skin stretched thin over grinning skulls. I fired. The shot hit center mass. His body jerked, staggered, then fell. For one heartbeat the voices stopped. I thought maybe it had ended, but then the echoes rose again, angrier, sharper, and the cracks in the stone split wider. Hands, not flesh but shadow, clawed out of them. Reaching for us, we ran. No formation, no discipline, only survival. The streets twisted beneath our boots, houses seeming to shift places, trapping us in loops. Every turn brought us back to the same square. Kent screamed that we were already dead. Mills begged for forgiveness from a god he no longer believed could hear him. Levin clutched his rifle but never fired. Ramirez stumbled with every step, his strength gone. I do not remember how we escaped. Only fragments, a break in the wall where no wall had been. Trees ahead that bent to form a path. Mills pushing me forward, saying he would hold them back, and the last glimpse I had of him, standing in the square as the shadows closed over him. By the time we broke through to the ridge, dawn was high, but the light felt wrong, dimmer than it should have been. Our radio sparked alive again, voices from command demanding a report. I could not speak. Kent did, shouting that we were compromised, that extraction was needed. But by the time the chopper came, it was only me and him. Ramirez and Levin were gone, vanished into the trees without a sound. They pulled us out, debriefed us until their pens dried, then filed it away. Kent did not last a week before he put his sidearm in his mouth. They said it was guilt, trauma. I knew better. I knew he still heard them whispering when he closed his eyes. As for me, every night since, I dream of that village. I dream of Harker's eyes, of the reflection that showed me what I would become. And sometimes, when I wake, I swear the shadows in my room do not belong to me. That is the end of my account. This file is now closed. But I ask you, if a place itself can hunger, if it can claim the living as part of its endless appetite, then how many villages, forests, or forgotten ruins already wait for us to stumble in and never walk back out?